Hey, welcome class of 2025 science students. Thanks for joining me today. Our lesson is going to be on observation and inference. At this point, you should have already done your 10 vocab words and submitted them using the Dropbox. Today's lesson is just going to deal with the first 4 vocab words. We have observation, we have quantitative observations, qualitative observations, and inferences. Let's start with this idea of an observation. When we make an observation, really we are observing something. You've been making observations from the very second you were born, even before then. But when you were born, you suddenly had all of these bright lights in your face, and you felt this cold temperature on your skin. You heard the voices of all these people around you. There were a whole new bunch of smells that you could suddenly smell, and within 30 minutes, something was popped in your mouth and you were eating. What were you using to make those observations? I bet you said your 5 senses, right? Yeah, your observations are made using your 5 senses. Sometimes those observations are going to be quantitative observations. Now, when you were a newborn, you made very simplistic observations. Temperature was cold, you screamed because you weren't happy. Your belly was hungry, you wanted something in your mouth, you screamed so that you could get that. Hopefully you've moved beyond that. And now you can use more sophisticated observations like quantitative and qualitative observations. Let's talk about the difference between these two. Your qualitative observations are the ones that you are making with your 5 senses. Just those basic 5 senses. Quantitative, you see the word quality makes up the beginning of qualitative observations. Quantitative is a quantity, quantitative, quantity. This is going to be a number amount, like I have two objects in my hands. One is red, one is orange. Which was the quantitative and which was the qualitative? 2 objects is the quantitative. I see the red object, I see the orange object. Those are qualitative. So qualitative and quantitative observations. The last vocab word here is an inference. And in inference, you are inferring or you are drawing a conclusion based on quantitative and qualitative observations. So let's say I have this object here. I have this red object. I'm using my sense of sight. I'm taking a crinkly, I hear this crinkly wrapper coming off of it. I'm using my sense of hearing. I can smell it. Well, it smells like cherries, and I've eaten cherries before, so it smells like cherries. I can touch it. The outside's a little sticky. And the final one is that I can taste it. Yep, I put it in my mouth, and it has a little bit of a sour taste at first, and then it becomes sweeter. I can continue these observations, these qualitative observations, till I get to the center of the lollipop, and then I'll notice that there's a Tootsie Roll in there. Oop, I just made an inference that it was a Tootsie Roll. So I take all of these observations using my 5 senses, and I would draw a conclusion that what I've got is a cherry-flavored lollipop. Some other observations. I may have noticed that there was one long stick sticking out of the bottom of it. That's an observation. Let's play a little game here. I've got an object in my hand. This object is red in color. I'm not going to show it to you yet. It's red in color. There is a stem sticking out of the top of my object. When I bite into it, it has a sweet, tangy flavor, but the inside color is white. When I smell it, it smells really sweet and fruity. Can you guess what the object is in my hand? I see a red color. When I bite into it, it's kind of a sweet, tangy, a pulp flavor, or I'm sorry, a pulp texture. It has a sweet, tangy smell to it. And when I bite in, it makes a crunching noise. Did you guess an apple? Or maybe, did you guess a tomato? So observations, you use your 5 senses. Your inference is your educated guess. Some of you may have guessed that it was an apple. Others may have guessed that it was a tomato. Your inference, your conclusion is based on your observations. Sometimes your inference is incorrect, and that's okay. It's an educated guess based on your observations. Sometimes you have to make more observations about it in order to make it a more accurate inference. We can improve our quantitative observations using instruments. Okay, so I could observe my apple. I can use my qualitative 5 senses to make observations. A quantitative observation might involve this instrument. This instrument's a ruler. Now, because it's a science class, we're going to try and use metric as often as we can. So if I put my apple on top of my ruler, it shows that it's about 6 centimeters in length. I have made a quantitative, a quantity, a number, measurement, or observation about my apple. How about this thing? We've been using these a lot lately, although we've gotten a little more sophisticated with our thermometers. Now we have the little infrared scanners for over our forehead. This is an old-fashioned way to do a quantitative observation of what your body temperature is. So you would pop this thing underneath your tongue, somebody or yourself, you would read it, and you would get a quantitative observation. I remember when my kids were little and I thought that they had a fever, the first thing I would do is I would qualitatively observe them by touching their forehead. If I couldn't tell if they had a fever, then I would pull out the thermometer to do a quantitative observation of their temperature. Okay. Quantitative, qualitative are our observations, and inference is a conclusion about what we think it is. How about this? Let's start with sight. Make a qualitative observation using the sense of sight. Most people would say it's orange. Let's use our sense of smell. Well, it's tangy, and sometimes if we like scratch the edge, we can get the oils from the orange to come out. And ooh, you get a real strong, pungent odor from it. So it's orange, has a strong, pungent odor. That's not really saying anything. So you can't always use all your observations, but if I were to peel it, I might hear it and I could tell that it was real juicy. If I taste it, the outside of it would be pretty bitter, but once I got inside, again, sweet, tangy, has kind of that citrusy. And then my sense of touch, well, the outside, it's lumpy, bumpy, kind of rough. When I get inside, it'll have a sticky liquid. Those are the observations. What's our inference? We would infer or conclude that we have an orange in our hands. Okay, got a challenge for you. And you're going to answer this challenge in the discussion.
So I've got two different liquids in these mason jars. I've got liquid A and liquid B. Let's make some observations about them. If we start with our sense of sight, both of these objects are kind of a caramel color, a little bit of a brownish caramel color. If I were to shine light through them, they might look even more of an orange color. So using our sense of sight, we can pick out the color. Using our sense of hearing, well, when I swish them around, one of them can make a sloshing noise. The other one doesn't make a sloshing noise. So we got sight and we've got hearing. Let's use our sense of touch. In liquid A, when I stick my finger in there, it feels cold, but it feels wet. And that's about it. And it dries on my finger. Liquid B, when I put my finger in there, it's kind of sticky. In fact, it's even kind of slippery. So they feel a little bit different. So we've got sense of sight. We listened to them. We felt them. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to smell each of them. Liquid A has kind of a bitter smell to it. Liquid B has a real sweet smell to it. You starting to draw an inference about what they might be? The last thing is if I taste them. Liquid A, when I take a taste, again, it has a little bit of a bitter taste to it. Liquid B, when I taste it, it's super, super sweet. One more observation I want to show you is what they look like when they are poured. So when I pour liquid A, you can hear it. When I pour liquid B is a much more viscous liquid, which means it is more resistant to flowing. It doesn't flow real easily. It's kind of thick. Okay, to wrap up this lesson today. Again, so to wrap up today's lesson, we have liquid A and we have liquid B. And I want you to go into the discussion post on my class page, and I want you to make an inference or draw a conclusion about what liquid A and liquid B was. If you need to, go back, rewatch the video so that you remember the difference between quantitative and qualitative observations, and then draw an inference or a conclusion. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Next week, we'll dive into predictions and how we use graphs to help us make those predictions. Have a good week.